The massive wooden doors creaked open, and the sound alone sent a ripple through the gallery. Every head turned, every breath seemed to pause. Diddy walked in, but gone was the swagger of a music legend. His steps were slow, deliberate, as though each one dragged a weight too heavy to carry. He didn't glance at the flashing lenses or the scribbling reporters. His gaze was fixed, locked on the judge's bench like a man walking toward the edge of a cliff he couldn't escape. He sat at the defense table, but his body betrayed the storm inside, fingers drumming, leg bouncing under the desk. The tension was thick enough to choke on, and from across the room, the prosecution starebore into him like the verdict was already written. Before we go further into this tense moment, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss stories like this. Now, let's get back into it. The sharp command, "All rise," cut through the silence like a blade. Instantly, the room stood. The judge entered, robes trailing, expression carved in stone. She didn't glance at the attorneys, not at first. Her eyes landed on Diddy, just for a second, but it was enough to send a chill crawling across the room. He swallowed, throat tight, fully aware the clock on his fate had already started ticking. This was it, his one chance to sway the decision, to turn the tide. But her stare wasn't soft, and it carried no warmth. It was a look of someone who knew they held the power to decide whether he'd walk out free or in shackles. Somewhere in the gallery, a cough broke the silence. It echoed, hollow and sharp, before fading again into suffocating quiet. Every breath felt loud. Every heartbeat seemed amplified. Everyone in that room knew the next few minutes would change everything. The judge scanned the courtroom slowly, deliberately, before fixing her eyes on the defense table. Her voice sliced through the heavy air. "Mr. Combs, your counsel may proceed." Diddy's lawyer rose, buttoned his jacket with steady hands, and stepped forward. No small talk, no wasted words. Straight into it, firm, sharp, cinematic. "Your Honor, this is not just a sentencing. This is a turning point between ruin and redemption. My client is not here to deny or excuse. He is here to accept, to prove he is more than the charges stamp against his name." He didn't drag it out. Each line was precise, deliberate, giving space for the gravity of his words to sink in. You've seen the artist. You've read the stories. But behind the headline stands a father, a mentor, a man who, if given the chance, can prove this day is not the closing chapter of his life. Diddy never looked away from the bench, his eyes locked on the judge, unblinking, as if trying to will her to feel the weight of every word. The gallery leaned forward, drawn in by the pull of the moment. No one dared look down or shift in their seat, because to miss even a second could mean missing the exact instant his fate bent. The prosecutor sat still, jaw clenched, lips pressed into a thin line, her pen twitching against the pad. She was ready, waiting for her turn to strike, but she let the defense pour every ounce of emotion into the air first. And the lawyer didn't waste a heartbeat. He painted snapshots instead of speeches. Diddy quietly funding youth programs, covering debts of families in his community, pulling struggling artists back from the brink. "Your Honor," he said firmly, "these are not the acts of a man without conscience. This is not a lost cause. This is a man who still has more to give." For a split second, the judge's pen froze mid-stroke. No movement, no expression, just stillness. It was enough to make heads in the gallery turn toward one another in quick, nervous glances. Something had landed, but this was a knife's edge, the most dangerous point. A pause like that could tilt in either direction. As Diddy's lawyer stepped back, the pressure in the room didn't lift. It doubled. The judge's gaze shifted toward the prosecution's table, and every heartbeat in the gallery seemed louder, faster, like the final second before lightning splits the sky. The prosecutor rose with calculated control, not rushing, moving like a hunter who knows the prey has nowhere left to run. Her heels clicked with sharp precision against the floor, each strike echoing through the silence. She didn't give Diddy a glance. Not yet. Her eyes locked on the judge, her face unreadable, her voice steady but commanding. "Your Honor," she began, every word deliberate. "We've heard apologies. We've heard promises. But what we have not heard, what this court has not been shown, is true accountability." She pivoted slowly, facing the jury in the gallery, her presence filling the space without a single raised note. "This is not about what Mr. Combs claims he'll do tomorrow. This is about what he has already done. A history. A pattern. And if this court does not act, it is a pattern that will continue. Her words struck like blades, slicing through whatever glow the defense had tried to cast. Evidence came down like hammer blows, financial trails, signed statements, documented incidents, each one so clean, so undeniable, it left no cracks or argument. This is not a lapse, she declared, her voice gaining momentum. These are deliberate choices, repeated again and again, with full knowledge of their consequences. At the defense table, Diddy's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, but his hand stayed locked on the edge of the desk, gripping it like it was the only anchor left. His attorney's pen hovered, but no objections came. The moment wasn't his to interrupt. Everyone in the room knew it. The gallery was silent, captivated, as though they were watching a slow-motion wreck they couldn't pull away from. Even the reporters didn't whisper, only exchanged knowing glances, their headlines already forming. Judge faces chilling evidence. The prosecutor never lost rhythm. "Your Honor," she pressed on, her gaze snapping back to the bench. "This man does not stand here for the first time. This is not a mistake. This is a cycle. And cycles don't break with hope. They break with consequences." Finally, she turned toward Diddy, locking on him with a stare colder than steel. She didn't say his name, but everyone in that room felt the weight of what she had just delivered. There would be no mercy here. Then, his lawyer rose again. But this time, the movement was different, decisive, deliberate. Every step toward the center was measured to pull the gravity back to his side. "Your Honor," he began, his tone sharper now. "The prosecution has painted a picture using only the darkest ink. They've ignored the light, the truths that reveal who this man really is." He reached toward the evidence table, lifting a stack of photographs for the room to see. These are not PR stunts. These are not headlines. These are real acts, unseen, unpublicized. One by one, images lit the screen. Diddy at community rebuilds, at funerals he paid for, with kids he mentored when no one else was there. Not glossy, not posed, just raw, candid snapshots of a man who never expected recognition. As the photos played, Diddy straightened, his eyes never leaving the judge. The gallery had gone silent again, but the silence felt different now, charged, like a shift could be within reach. The lawyer's tone softened, growing personal. "We are not here to erase the past. We are not denying mistakes. But if justice reduces a man's entire life to his worst chapters, then it isn't justice at all, it's punishment for punishment's sake." He stepped closer to Diddy, resting a hand firmly on his shoulder. "If this is the last time he speaks in this courtroom, then let him speak. Not through lawyers. Not through arguments. Just him, looking you in the eye, telling you what this day means for his future." The silence clung to the courtroom like a fog, thick and unshakable. Seconds dragged into what felt like hours, every breath a little too loud, every shift in the seat echoing like thunder. The judge's eyes never blinked, never wavered, drilling into Diddy as if she could peel away the surface and see straight through to his soul. The gallery leaned forward unconsciously, as if drawn by an invisible string. Reporters froze mid-sentence, their pens hovering above notepads. Even the bailiff, usually unshaken, had his jaw clenched tight. Everyone was waiting, straining, desperate to hear whether his plea had broken through or bounced off the stone walls of justice. Then, at last, the judge leaned forward ever so slightly. It was the smallest of movements, but in that moment it felt seismic. The wooden bench groaned under her shift, and the air itself seemed to tighten. Her hands folded neatly, her face unreadable, but her presence filled every corner of the room. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, but sharp enough to slice through the suffocating silence. "Mr. Combs," she said slowly, her tone deliberate, each syllable landing heavy. "I've heard your words. I've seen your expression. But this court does not deal in feelings. It deals in facts, in history, in actions." A ripple went through the room. Quiet gasps, the shuffle of feet, but no one dared speak. The judge's gaze stayed locked on him, cold and unyielding. "You asked for belief," she continued, her tone tightening. "But belief is not granted. It is earned. And the question before this court is simple. Have you earned it?" Her words didn't just hang in the air. They pressed down on everyone, a weight so heavy it seemed to bend the atmosphere. Diddy's jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides, though he forced them to unclench. His chest rose and fell slowly, fighting to keep his composure as the courtroom sat on edge, knowing the next few minutes would decide everything. The gavel hadn't fallen yet, but the sound of judgment already loomed, like thunder gathering just beyond the horizon. The room was a vacuum, every creak and shuffle swallowed by silence. Even the faint hum of the vents felt deafening. Seconds dragged, tension coiling tighter with each one. No one dared to breathe. Finally, the judge leaned forward, hands folding neatly on the bench. Her voice was calm, but edged like a blade. "Mr. Combs," she said slowly, "you've spoken about your family, your regrets, your intentions. But intentions are not the same as actions. And while you tell this court you change, the question is whether the evidence shows the same." The words struck harder than any shout. Diddy stiffened, lips pressed in. This wasn't a question, it was a demand for proof. Proof he knew he couldn't fully give. Sensing the opening, the prosecutor rose smoothly, stepping to the center of the room. "Your Honor, what we've heard is a performance. A heartfelt one, yes, but a performance all the same. This is not a first-time mistake. This man has been given chances to change, and he has failed. Again and again." She turned, her gaze slicing toward Diddy. "Mercy is not owed because you asked for it. Mercy is earned." A murmur rippled through the gallery until the bailiff's bark cut it dead. Diddy's chest rose and fell heavily, his stare locked on the judge. His lawyer sat motionless, knowing one wrong word could tip the scales. The judge's pen tapped once against a notepad before she set it down. She leaned back, eyes locked on Diddy, sharp, unflinching, unreadable. And in that gaze, the entire room felt it. The hammer was coming. Slowly, she leaned forward, elbows resting on the bench. The movement was subtle, but it sent a ripple through the gallery. The silence grew so heavy it seemed ready to shatter. "Mr. Combs," she began again, her voice low but slicing, "I've heard your plea. I've heard your counsel. I weighed your words against the facts, the evidence, and your history." She let the weight of her pause choke the room. "You asked for mercy. But mercy is not spoken, it is proven." Diddy's jaw locked, knuckles whitening against the table. The judge's tone dropped colder. "The truth is this, you've stood in this very position before. You've made promises before. You've had chances before. And yet, here we are again." The judge straightened, her voice rising just enough to slice through the silence. "You speak of redemption, but redemption without accountability is hollow, and I will not hand out empty second chances." A murmur stirred in the gallery, but the bailiff's booming order cut it dead. The tension snapped tight, the air almost electric. Diddy's breathing grew heavier, his mask of composure cracking. He looked like he might speak, but his lawyer's subtle shake of the head held him back. The weight of everything unsaid pressed down on the room. The moment teetered on a knife's edge. Every soul inside knew the judge's next word would decide everything, whether Diddy's last hope lived or died. She leaned back briefly, then forward, eyes locked on him with an intensity that could shatter glass. When her voice came, calm but crushing, each syllable landed like a hammer. "Mr. Combs, you asked for mercy, but this court has heard your words before. You swore you'd change, you swore you'd grow, and yet, here you stand again. This is not redemption. This is repetition." The gallery froze, silence stretching thick and suffocating. "You built your career on power, on influence, on commanding attention," she continued, her gaze never faltering. "But here, none of that matters. In this courtroom, you are judged not by your fame, not by your empire, but by the choices you made when the cameras were gone." She let the words hang in the air, the pause deliberate, surgical. "And based on those choices, this court cannot and will not grant leniency." Diddy's head dipped forward, his eyes closing for just a fraction of a second. It was like watching a man absorb the punch he always feared was coming. His lawyer shifted, but there was no objection to be made. This wasn't an argument. This was judgment. The judge's tone sharpened, her decision delivered like a blade. "I refuse to alter the sentence. You will serve exactly what was handed down. No adjustments. No reductions. No mercy." Gasps ripped through the room, raw and involuntary. The air felt knocked out of everyone at once. Reporters scribbled frantically. Cameras clicked like gunfire, the bailiff's bark of order barely denting the chaos. Diddy's hands clamped the table, knuckles bone-white, but his eyes never lifted. The hope he carried in was gone, shattered, publicly and irreversibly, before the world. The gavel struck once, sharp and unforgiving, echoing like a gunshot, and then it was over. The judge slipped out through the side door without a backward glance, leaving only the sound hanging in the air. Her words weren't just sentences. They were stone, a verdict that would not bend, not break, and not be forgotten. The gallery wasn't silent. It was alive with a low hum of whispers, the shuffling of feet, and reporters' pens scratching like knives on paper. But at the defense table, Diddy didn't move. His hands clutched the edge so tightly his knuckles went pale. It was like if he let go, he'd finally admit what just happened. His lawyer leaned in, whispering quick, desperate words, maybe urging him to stand, maybe already planning an appeal. But none of it registered. Diddy was somewhere else, locked inside the crushing silence of his own head. Finally, he pushed himself up, slow, heavy, broken. His shoulders slumped, his head hung low. He turned toward the gallery. His eyes searched for familiar faces, and he found them, his family, his friends, the people who had stood by him. But their expressions told him everything. They were just as shattered as he was. The prosecutor didn't smirk, didn't celebrate. She simply packed up her files with the cold precision of someone whose work was done. The bailiff's hand flicked toward the door. It was time. Diddy stepped forward, and in an instant, the cameras exploded. Flashes like lightning. Shouts like stones thrown at his chest. Do you regret it now? What's your next move? But he didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked ahead, every step heavier than the last. When the courtroom doors swung open, chaos swallowed him whole. Reporters lunged, microphones shoved in his face, voices colliding in a storm of noise. But he moved through it like a man underwater. Each sound muted, drowned out by the words that still echoed in his skull. The judge's voice, calm but merciless. No mercy. And as those doors finally closed behind him, shutting away the courtroom forever, one truth hit harder than any headline, harder than any flashbulb glare. There would be no next time.